Welcome back to Happily Ever WTF. We're so glad you're joining us today because we are diving deep into a story that truly doesn't just stick with you. It might actually shift how you think about betrayal, trust, trauma, and, that immense, often suffocating pressure to forgive,
Hmm.
especially when the pain, it doesn't just magically disappear over time, right? This isn't just another relationship drama you scroll past. It's this raw, really compelling, almost unbelievable personal story that we found shared on Reddit. Thousands of people have weighed in on it. The details are shocking, but the themes are so universal.
Yeah, that's what's so striking.
So we're going to unpack this narrative piece by honestly agonizing piece. And hopefully by the end, you'll gain some profound insight into the real lasting impact of betrayal and what true personal healing actually looks like, even when the world tells you it should look different.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is how this story just illuminates these universal struggles. So many of us face them, right?
Mhm.
Especially within complex family dynamics, the vital act of setting crucial boundaries.
Oh, absolutely. Boundaries.
And that often misunderstood societal narrative around forgiveness versus, genuine internal healing. So our mission for this deep dive really is to extract those crucial nuggets of knowledge. What does real closure mean? Especially when it's intensely personal, not dictated by what everyone else expects.
Right.
We'll explore how to navigate these incredibly complex emotional landscapes and, ultimately, how to fiercely protect your own peace after deep, lasting hurt. The seeds of betrayal, Mark's ordeal and unthinkable actions.
Okay, so let's dive into this truly challenging situation. Our story centers on a young man named Mark. He was just 22 when his whole life just changed in an instant. At that point, he had a long-term girlfriend, Jessie. They'd been together like 5.5 years, and he had an older brother, Cameron. So, looking from the outside, it seems like he had this rock-solid support system, the people who were supposed to be there no matter what.
Absolutely. And when we talk about psychological safety, fundamental trust, these two figures, a long-term partner and older sibling, they're often seen as like foundational pillars in a young person's life.
Yeah.
So that initial context is so crucial because it really sets the stage for the profound violation that comes next.
Yeah.
His, emotional, practical reliance on them would have been just implicit, a bedrock.
And then life throws him this unimaginable curveball. Mark gets into a near-fatal accident. And this wasn't minor. This was a traumatic brain injury, a TBI. He's rushed to the hospital, literally fighting for his life, unconscious, doctors working around the clock just to keep him alive. I mean, can you imagine the sheer vulnerability of that state?
Hard to even comprehend.
He was in a coma on the brink, totally defenseless.
Yeah.
And when he finally starts to, emerge from that coma, he's facing this incredibly daunting, arduous task of learning how to speak again, how to walk again, how to eat, manage basic cognitive functions. It was a complete physical, neurological rebuilding process from the ground up. A marathon of recovery. Yeah.
Every single day was about just reclaiming a tiny piece of himself.
And the physical trauma Mark endured, it put him in this extremely compromised, dependent state. His ability to process information, to advocate for himself, even just to be aware of his surroundings in a meaningful way was, severely diminished, maybe entirely absent at times.
Right.
That level of vulnerability makes what happened next, what those closest to him did, not just a breach of trust, but a deeply cynical exploitation of his weakest, most helpless moment. Psychologically, his whole sense of self, his bodily autonomy, his emotional boundaries would have been incredibly fragile. They demanded the utmost care and protection from the people he loved.
And this is where the story takes just a shocking, almost unfathomable turn. While Mark was in this critical state, while he was literally fighting to stay alive, trying to rebuild his brain and body cell by cell, Jessie, his long-term girlfriend, discovered she was pregnant.
Oh my goodness. You would think, right, naturally, that getting this life-altering news, her first thought would be, okay, I need to talk to Mark's family, his parents, his sister, or at the very, very least, wait until he was stable enough to even comprehend it, to discuss this monumental development. But she didn't.
And this is such a critical pivot point in the story, that immediate choice to exclude Mark's family, and more importantly, Mark himself, given his state from such a huge personal decision, it immediately signals a breakdown of that expected support system.
Yeah.
It suggests her priorities shifted away from Mark's well-being, his involvement, and maybe, a calculated attempt to manage the situation entirely on her own terms. Free from scrutiny, free from the emotional weight of involving his actual support network. It's just this unilateral decision with profound long-term consequences.
And then what she did next? Well, it's truly the gut punch of the story. It's the point where you just shake your head. Instead of going to Mark's family, instead of waiting for him to recover enough to even form a coherent thought, she turned to Cameron, Mark's older brother, for help.
His brother.
His brother. And it wasn't just for emotional support, like you might think initially. She turned to him specifically to help her arrange and go through with terminating the pregnancy.
Wow.
And then, as if that unspeakable act of betrayal wasn't enough, not long after the abortion, Jesse and Cameron started sleeping together. I mean, just think about the timeline here, y'all. Mark was literally learning how to speak again, how to form words, how to take his first steps after the trauma, trying to regain basic human functions, things we all take for granted. And the two people who claimed to love him most, his supposed pillars of support, his girlfriend of 5.5 years and his own older brother, were already moving on with each other. The sheer profound cruelty and abandonment here is just staggering. It's a betrayal of trust, of family bonds, of basic human decency on a level that it's hard to even wrap your head around.
This specific detail, it just underscores the immense psychological burden placed on Mark, a burden that would undoubtedly complicate his already incredibly hard physical recovery.
Absolutely.
The layers of betrayal here are so complex, so deeply disturbing. It's not just infidelity, which is damaging enough on its own. It's a profound violation of trust that happened during a time of extreme vulnerability, severe physical trauma. His very existence was in question, right? His identity was being painstakingly put back together. And the people he relied on, the ones who should have been his anchors, instead chose actions that just systematically stripped away his emotional safety net.
Yeah.
It's a calculated, repeated choice against someone who literally could not defend himself, couldn't process, couldn't even comprehend what was happening to him.
It's almost like they saw his vulnerability not as a reason to protect him, but as like an opportunity to carve out their own path, no matter the cost to him.
Exactly. And this raises such an important question about the true nature of a support system and the devastating impact when that fundamental trust, especially during a life or death situation, is not just broken, but utterly shattered by those closest to you. The psychological implications of that kind of betrayal on a person's recovery are just immense. How do you heal physically? How do you even begin to trust your own body again when the emotional ground beneath you has been so thoroughly destroyed by the very people who should have been nurturing it?
Right.
That emotional wound could easily impede the physical healing. It creates an even more arduous, complex recovery path. The trauma is multifaceted. Physical, emotional, relational. It's this complex web of healing that, honestly, few therapists are even equipped to fully address. 2. The unraveling and Mark's stand.
So as these dark, corrosive secrets were festering, Mark was slowly, agonizingly making progress. He's recovering, rediscovering language, relearning movement, trying to piece his life back together. But the truth, you know how it is, it almost always finds a way out. Eventually. And it wasn't Mark who uncovered it, it was his sister.
The sister.
Yeah. She started noticing some really significant red flags. Little things, subtle inconsistencies in their stories, maybe an odd, almost too comfortable dynamic between Jesse and Cameron. A shift in their behavior. She just had this gut feeling that something was deeply wrong.
Good for her for trusting that gut feeling.
Totally. And she wasn't afraid to confront them. She looked at Jesse and Cameron, saw what was happening, and she pushed them until, under that pressure, they finally confessed.
The sister's perception, her intuition, and most importantly, her courage, they're absolutely crucial here. She became this sort of unexpected guardian of Mark's emotional well-being, sensing that deeper discord beneath the surface.
Yeah.
Her role just highlights the profound importance of having an advocate, especially when the victim is still recovering, still vulnerable, unable to fully protect themselves. She acted as this crucial emotional buffer and truth seeker in a situation where Mark was just completely exposed.
And when they finally came clean, Jesse, with what I can only describe as an astounding, almost unbelievable level of audacity, actually suggested that they could still work it out.
No.
Seriously, imagine that. She had cheated with his brother, hidden a pregnancy, gotten an abortion, all while he was in a coma or recovering from a TBI, continued the affair, and then she has the nerve to suggest they could just pick up where they left off. Like these were just minor indiscretions you could talk away over coffee. It's truly mind-boggling. A complete lack of grasp on reality.
What's fascinating there and horrifying is the complete lack of understanding on Jesse's part.
Yeah.
The depths, the magnitude of the transgression, her suggestion that they could still work it out implies this almost delusional entitlement,
Totally.
a gross underestimation of the emotional, the psychological damage she inflicted. It just speaks to a fundamental disconnect from reality, an inability to truly empathize with Mark's experience. Forgiveness or reconciliation in that scenario, it would demand an almost unfathomable level of emotional labor from Mark, with zero genuine acknowledgement or effort from them. It's just this self-serving attempt to minimize their actions, avoid the real consequences, rather than a sincere plea for repair.
But here's where Mark shows just incredible strength. A clear sense of self-worth, even in the middle of his overwhelming recovery. Despite everything he was going through, the sheer weight of what he just learned, he didn't waver. His response was immediate, firm.
Good for him.
Mark said no, just like that. No hesitation, no second chances, no trying to salvage anything. He cut them both off completely. Told them to leave, blocked their numbers, severed all ties, done.
Wow.
And honestly, I don't blame him. Not one bit. His decision was just this profound act of self-preservation.
Mark's immediate boundary setting is such a powerful, almost heroic act of self-preservation. It highlights the absolute necessity of protecting your mental, your emotional well-being when you're faced with such profound, multifaceted hurt. It's a clear declaration that his peace, his recovery, are paramount, even if it means cutting ties with people once considered family. It's a testament to understanding that some lines, once crossed so egregiously, with such callous disregard for vulnerability, they just cannot be uncrossed.
Right.
It underscores the idea that not all relationships are worth salvaging, especially when the cost is your own sanity and health.
And while Mark was making this incredibly difficult but necessary decision, his family, as often happens in these situations, was split right down the middle.
Yeah, that's common.
His parents, unfortunately, started pushing really heavily for reconciliation. Their refrain was that classic, often damaging sentiment, family is family and just let it go.
Ugh, that phrase.
That old adage, isn't it? Blood is thicker than water. You have to forgive family no matter what they've done.
And that is such a common, yet often deeply damaging societal and familial pressure. Many families operate under this unwritten rule that family bonds just supersede all transgressions. It frequently places the burden of reconciliation, the emotional labor, squarely on the person who was betrayed.
Yeah.
This raises an important question, doesn't it? About how our societal constructs of family can sometimes inadvertently enable or even perpetuate harm by prioritizing genetic ties over genuine respect, ethical conduct, the victim's well-being. This pressure can create a whole second layer of trauma for the betrayed person, forcing them to choose between their own healing and maintaining family harmony, such as it is. But contrast that with Mark's sister. She stood firm, unwavering, unconditional support. She never pressured him, she just had his back, accepted his decision without judgment. It shows those starkly diverging paths people take when faced with these incredibly tough family situations.
Yeah.
Her support validated Mark's pain, validated his decision. It offered him that crucial psychological safety net his parents, perhaps unwittingly, were trying to take away. Her actions showed true loyalty.
She truly was the rock in that situation. Knowing someone truly understands and supports your boundary, especially when other people, even your own parents, are pushing against it, that can make all the difference in the world for someone trying to heal. 3. A decade later, the unwanted plea for closure. So, time passed. A lot of time. 11 years, to be precise.
11 years, wow.
In that decade plus, Jesse and Cameron, they stayed together. They eventually had a child, built a life together, presumably, moving forward with their new family unit. Meanwhile, Mark was still recovering, both emotionally and physically. That deep, searing betrayal. It wasn't something that just evaporated with the years. The psychological impact, the memory, the trust issues, they stuck with him. A constant, maybe duller, but still presence. Trauma rarely just disappears on a convenient timeline, does it?
No, absolutely not. And the passage of time often carries this societal expectation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That wounds will just heal, people will get over traumatic events, especially if the perpetrators seem to have moved on.
Right, it's been so long.
Exactly. But this story powerfully shows that healing doesn't stick to a linear timeline, especially when the initial trauma was so profound, involves such deep relational betrayal. The memory, the impact, the psychological imprint often lingers. It shapes future relationships, your sense of safety in the world, even if the acute pain subsides. That's why imposing external timelines for healing is just so counterproductive.
And then life threw Mark another curveball. He had a second health scare, another moment of vulnerability, thankfully not as severe as the initial accident, but still significant.
Hmm.
But it was this new health issue, this reminder of his own fragility that served as the catalyst. The unlikely reason for Cameron to suddenly reappear in Mark's life after more than a decade of complete silence.
It's often the case, isn't it, that external circumstances, particularly things that remind people of their own mortality or unresolved issues, can prompt these attempts at reconciliation. Or, in this case, what seems like a pretty self-serving quest for peace. The timing suggests Cameron's outreach was probably less about Mark's well-being and more about his own internal discomfort. Maybe a desire to rectify something for his own conscience, possibly triggered by this moment of reflection related to Mark's health scare.
Exactly. And when Cameron did reach out, after all that time, after everything he had done, the betrayal, exploiting Mark's vulnerability, the decade of silence, you'd think there'd be a profound, heartfelt apology.
You'd hope so.
A genuine expression of remorse, a full, unambiguous acknowledgement of the unspeakable pain he caused. But no. The source explicitly states he didn't say sorry, he didn't take full accountability.
Of course not.
His stated goal was simply closure. He wanted to talk, clear the air, essentially get his peace for his own benefit.
Okay, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Cameron's request for closure without genuine apology or accountability. It's a classic example. Someone trying to alleviate their own guilt and discomfort rather than truly acknowledging the victim's pain or the magnitude of their actions. It's a common dynamic where the perpetrator seeks to resolve their internal dissonance, often at the expense of the person they harmed. They want to wipe the slate clean for themselves, feel better about their past without doing the hard work of genuine repentance and fully understanding the lasting damage they caused.
Yeah.
This is where closure often gets twisted, you see. From the betrayer's view, closure is about ending their discomfort. From the betrayed's perspective, it's about healing. And that often doesn't require or even involve the betrayer at all. It's about self-serving relief, not genuine reconciliation.
And when Mark's sister, still his staunch defender, still protecting his peace, refused to give Cameron his contact information, Cameron didn't take no for an answer.
Ugh.
He took matters into his own entitled hands. The source says he showed up at her house demanding to talk to Mark.
Demanding.
Demanding. This wasn't a gentle request. It was a demand, an invasion of privacy, and a complete, arrogant disregard for boundaries that had been clearly established over a decade earlier.
This escalation, showing up uninvited and demanding contact at the sister's home, it clearly shows a profound sense of entitlement and a continued pattern of disrespect. It just raises that important question about respecting boundaries, right? Especially when forgiveness or reconciliation is clearly not on the table from the victim's side.
Absolutely.
It signifies that Cameron's desire for his own emotional relief just outweighed any consideration for Mark's peace or the sister's right to privacy and safety. It's not about mending a relationship. It's about controlling the narrative and forcing a resolution that benefits him, no matter the discomfort it causes others. This action alone, after 11 years of silence, highlights a continued pattern of, frankly, emotional aggression and a fundamental failure to comprehend the gravity of his past actions and their lasting impact. He just didn't understand, or maybe didn't care, about the concept of no.
It's almost as if he felt he was owed a conversation. Owed that release from his guilt, regardless of the emotional cost to Mark, regardless of the boundary he was violating. The audacity is truly, truly astounding. 4. Mark's unwavering peace. Defining personal closure. So Cameron shows up at the sister's house demanding this closure, demanding to speak with Mark. And Mark's response, when it was finally conveyed, was just definitive, unwavering, absolutely powerful in its simplicity and clarity. He told him, through his sister, no forgiveness, no closure. You should have thought about that before you betrayed me.
Wow. Direct.
And that was that. The line was drawn 11 years later, and it remained uncrossed. The family, predictably, remains divided. Mark's parents are still begging him to make peace, still pushing that narrative of forced reconciliation, still clinging to the ideal of a united family. His sister, bless her, is still standing firm by his side, unwavering in her support of his decision, a true guardian of his peace. And Mark is at peace. Finally, not because he forgave them, but because he chose not to.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting and often challenges these deeply ingrained societal norms. People love to romanticize forgiveness, don't they?
Oh, absolutely.
It's a deeply ingrained societal, even spiritual concept, often presented as the ultimate, maybe the only, path to healing and inner peace. They say things like, you're only hurting yourself if you hold on to the pain, or forgive for your sake, not theirs.
We hear that all the time.
All the time. But what they never talk about is the immense, often agonizing work it actually takes to get to a place of genuine forgiveness, if that place is even attainable or, frankly, desired by the person who is hurt. And they certainly don't talk about the ethical implications of forcing it or the potential for re-traumatization when you re-engage with an unrepentant betrayer.
It's like they're saying if you haven't forgiven, you're doing something wrong. You're incomplete or not healed enough.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And they never talk about the inconvenient truth that true healing doesn't stick to a neat, linear schedule. It isn't this clean process ending with one conversation. It's messy, it's circuitous, and it's profoundly unique to each individual. What happened to Mark wasn't some petty disagreement or a minor slight. It was profound, multi-layered trauma. His girlfriend and his brother made a conscious choice to betray him, to exploit his vulnerability. And they didn't just make that choice once. They made it again and again and again.
Right.
They built a life together on the ashes of his suffering. And now, more than a decade later, after building that life, they want to talk it out. It's just such a stark illustration of the uneven burden of emotional labor.
It just feels so utterly self-serving on their part, doesn't it? Like, okay, they've finally reached a point where their conscience is bothering them, and now they expect Mark to provide the balm, to do the work of absolving them.
Precisely. And this highlights a crucial distinction.
Mm-hmm.
Closure isn't always a conversation. In fact, sometimes closure is silence. It's that powerful, self-respecting act of saying, implicitly or explicitly, you don't get to feel better just because you finally feel guilty. Mark's peace, in this context, comes not from reconciliation or granting forgiveness, but from setting and fiercely maintaining those firm boundaries. His strength lies in his agency to define his own healing, irrespective of external pressures or the selfish needs of his betrayers. His peace isn't contingent on their apology or their comfort. It's born from his decision to protect his space and his sanity, to refuse to carry their emotional baggage. This is a profound redefinition of what peace and closure can truly mean for the person who's been betrayed.
So his peace didn't come from some forced, painful conversation that only benefited them, but from a deliberate, self-respecting distance and the absolute refusal to engage in a dynamic that only served their comfort.
Absolutely. It's about taking back control of his narrative, his emotional landscape. He took the power back by refusing to engage on their terms, by recognizing that their desire for closure was really just a desire to alleviate their own guilt and that he owed them nothing.
Yeah.
This choice to maintain distance allowed him to hear on his own terms without constantly reopening those old wounds. The actionable wisdom, redefining forgiveness and boundaries.
Okay, let's unpack this with some real talk, some actionable advice based on Mark's really powerful story. Because while this is his story, the themes, profound betrayal, the absolute necessity of boundaries, the deeply personal journey of healing, they resonate with so many of us who've experienced some kind of deep hurt.
Indeed, we can extract some incredibly valuable, empowering wisdom from Mark's unwavering stance, lessons that really challenge conventional wisdom and empower the individual. So first, 1, forgiveness is your journey, not a gift you owe your betrayer. This is just critical to internalize. You are not obligated to hand out forgiveness just because time passed or because someone else, a parent, a friend, society thinks you should.
Right.
Healing isn't a clock ticking down to some preset deadline. It's deeply personal, often unpredictable, messy. It might involve forgiveness or it might not. And both paths are equally valid for your healing. The decision rests solely with the person who was hurt. This means you decide when, if ever, and how that forgiveness manifests. It can be internal, a letting go for your own peace, without ever involving the other person or requiring their repentance. The burden of your emotional peace should never be placed on the actions or remorse of those who harmed you. Which leads to the second point. 2, closure is a personal decision, and you don't owe anyone access to your healing. This is equally vital. You do not owe anyone access to your healing process, especially not the people who caused the wound in the first place.
Yeah.
If talking to the individuals who hurt you reopens wounds, causes further distress, or tries to shift blame, then protecting yourself by maintaining distance is closure. It's a valid, powerful act of self-care. Your peace is paramount. And if that means not engaging with the source of your pain, that is your absolute right. You are not responsible for someone else's emotional comfort, their desire to alleviate their guilt, or their need for a tidy ending. Your closure is for you. And it can be found in 1,000 ways that don't involve the person who caused the harm. Third point, and this is a tough one for many. 3, Family does not mean free passes for egregious behavior. It's essential for healthy emotional living. The title of brother, sister, parent, whatever,
Yeah.
it doesn't automatically come with unlimited grace or an automatic pass for egregious, repeated, or exploitative behavior.
So important.
Respect must be earned and re-earned in trust. Once it's broken in such a profound, systematic way, especially when vulnerability was exploited, it might never, ever fully return, nor should it be expected to. Blood relation does not obligate you to tolerate disrespect, abuse, or repeated betrayal. Boundaries are just as, if not more, important within family dynamics because the emotional ties are so strong. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to distance yourself from toxic family members, recognizing that family can also be the source of your deepest wounds. Okay, number 4.
Yeah.
You could forgive in silence for your own peace without external interaction. This goes against a lot of common wisdom, right? That forgiveness must be this grand gesture or verbal declaration. But it's incredibly empowering.
Yeah, I like that.
You don't have to announce it. You don't have to explain it to the person who hurt you. You certainly don't have to invite them back into your life, make amends for their sake, or pretend the past never happened. You could do the internal work of releasing the bitterness, the resentment, the desire for vengeance, for your own peace, while keeping your boundaries rock solid and maintaining necessary distance. Forgiveness, in this sense, is about freeing yourself from the emotional burden of carrying that hurt so it no longer consumes you. It's not about exonerating the other person or restoring a broken relationship, especially if they remain unrepentant or unsafe. It's a quiet internal liberation. And finally, number 5. 5, having at least one person who defends you can change everything. Mark's sister in this story, she's the real MVP, right? An unsung hero.
Absolutely.
Her unwavering support, her refusal to be swayed by the parents' pressure, her steadfast protection of Mark's boundaries, that was absolutely invaluable to his healing. When the world, or even your own family, tells you to get over it or forgive them, having just one person who validates your pain and supports your autonomy, it can be life-saving. Their belief in your right to heal on your own terms provides this crucial anchor. If you've got someone like that in your corner, hold them close, cherish them. And if you don't have that person, then you absolutely must learn to be that person for yourself.
Yeah.
Advocate for your own peace, protect your own boundaries, stand firm in your decisions, even when it's incredibly hard and goes against what everyone else expects. You deserve that unwavering support, even if it has to come from within.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means understanding that you have profound agency in your healing journey. You have the power to define what peace looks like for you, to set your own terms for recovery, and to prioritize your well-being above external pressures or the desires of those who have hurt you. It's about taking back control of your narrative and your emotional landscape, recognizing that your worth is not tied to your capacity to forgive someone who shows no remorse. 6. A nuanced, learned. Look at forgiveness. Spiritual perspective. Let's transition now just for a moment to a deeper reflection on this, specifically from a spiritual perspective, because for many people, that's a huge component when grappling with profound betrayal. For many, the concept of forgiveness is deeply intertwined with their faith, and that adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
And that's a very important dimension to explore because it frequently creates this additional layer of pressure for individuals in Mark's situation. Within many spiritual traditions, you find passages like Ephesians 4.32. It states, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you."
That's right.
That verse and others like it are often cited as this clear directive to forgive. And it can feel like a heavy moral imperative.
Which, as we've discussed, can feel incredibly overwhelming, paralyzing. Even when you've been deeply, truly wounded to your core, it can make you feel like you're failing or you're not spiritual enough, or maybe even a bad person if you can't just immediately let it go or extend grace to someone who caused you so much pain.
Precisely. However, it's so crucial to provide a deeply nuanced interpretation of this and similar spiritual injunctions. Yes, many faiths call us to forgive, but that forgiveness isn't always immediate, nor does it necessarily mean an immediate full reconciliation or reestablishment of the relationship exactly as it was before the betrayal.
Yeah.
Forgiveness, in this spiritual context, it doesn't mean pretending the betrayal didn't happen or that the pain magically vanished. It certainly doesn't mean you have to re-engage with the person who hurt you, especially if they continue to be a source of harm, show no genuine remorse, or present a threat to your emotional or physical safety.
So it's not about ignoring the reality of the wound or about condoning the behavior that caused it. It sounds like it's more about an internal process.
No, not at all ignoring it. True forgiveness, within this kind of spiritual framework fundamentally means choosing not to let their betrayal poison your future.
Hmm.
It's an internal act, releasing the bitterness, the resentment, the desire for vengeance, the constant replaying of the hurt so that you're not consumed by the negativity. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional chains of the past so you can move forward with a sense of peace and wholeness. It is, first and foremost, for your benefit, an act of self-liberation rather than an absolution for the perpetrator. It allows you to put down that heavy burden of carrying someone else's wrongdoing. And this is key for anyone grappling with this. If you're not there yet, if you're still processing the pain, still hurting from the betrayal, and the thought of forgiveness feels impossible, know that God, or whatever higher power you believe in, sees your heart. There is patience. There is understanding. You are not expected to immediately leap from profound trauma to perfect peace. Healing is a journey, often a very long one. There is no divine stopwatch on your healing.
That's important to hear.
Absolutely. So the caution here is profound. Don't rush the process. Don't fake forgiveness just to meet some external expectation from family, friends, or even a perceived spiritual obligation. Don't crack open a deeply healed wound just to prove to someone else, or even to yourself, that you're healed or spiritual.
Yeah.
You are absolutely allowed to take your time, and you are absolutely allowed to protect your peace. This raises an important question, really. How do we reconcile these deeply held beliefs about forgiveness with the messy, painful, deeply human reality of profound betrayal and the inherent need for self-preservation? It's a tension many people grapple with, and Mark's story offers a very personal, very powerful answer to that struggle.
It's such a powerful reminder that true healing isn't always pretty or quick. And it certainly doesn't always look like what others expect or what popular culture tells us it should be. It's often an intensely internal, private journey. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just to say no to what everyone else expects of you. Outro. This story isn't just Mark's. I mean, so many of us have been hurt, betrayed, or profoundly let down by the very people we thought would protect us, the ones who were supposed to be our safe harbor. And when that happens, when your trust is shattered by those closest to you, you don't owe them comfort. You don't owe them closure on their terms. You don't owe them a seat at your table just because they finally notice it's missing, or because it's convenient for them now to try and ease their own conscience. Your peace is your most valuable asset, and you are its fiercest guardian. So if the story hit home for you, if you've ever had to make that hard, solitary choice to walk away, to protect your peace, to forgive from afar, or perhaps not at all, consider. Would you have forgiven Cameron? Could you ever truly trust someone who did you like that again? What's your definition of peace when confronted with such a profound betrayal?
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is the sheer strength it takes to define peace on your own terms, especially when society or even your own family expects something entirely different, something that might even re-traumatize you. Mark's story is just such a powerful testament to that inner resilience.
Thank you for listening to Happily Ever WTF. We may not have it all figured out, but at least we're in this mess together. See you next time. This story, by the way, was found on Reddit.